I was listening to the pro-Labour front bench MPs in the tea room saying, wow, we did well there, we stopped the vote, we sorted this lot out, we sorted out Corbyn and his mates. It was like kids playing with people's lives in Gaza and in the West Bank. And then it didn't work. It did not work at all. The opposite happened. The public were appalled at this cynical behaviour, and the damage that is done to the Labour Party was absolutely immense.
Welcome to the Big Picture podcast. My name is Mohammed Hassan, and today we're on the road. We're in North Islington, North London, on this beautiful sunny afternoon to talk to Jeremy Corbyn, the former Labour leader and a former guest on this show. The last time we spoke to him, he'd just been suspended from Labour, barred from running again as a Labour MP. So, in the lead up to this general election, he's running anyway as an independent. For the first time in 40 years that he has held this seat, he is now running against his former party. So how does he feel about his chances? And as a lifelong campaigner for Palestinian rights, how does he feel about the growing movement to boycott Labour over their support of Israel? Jeremy Corbyn, it's a pleasure to have you back on the podcast. Welcome to the Big Picture.
Wonderful to see you, and thanks for coming here on Midsummer's Day.
Yeah, we're on your home turf this time. Last time we spoke was in our office, in our studio.
Here we are, Archway N19.
So you have had a 40-year political career that has been centered here in this constituency. This constituency has your fingerprints all over it. And of course, this entire time and your entire political career has been campaigning as part of the Labour Party. And this is the first time in your entire political career that you're campaigning essentially against the party that has made you. What does that feel like?
It's a very strange feeling because, as you say, I joined the Labour Party when I was 16. I've been in it all my life. I have held every position there is to hold in the Labour Party, from what we used to call street collectors, where we went around collecting subscriptions, to leader. And the party has become very authoritarian towards local parties, refused to allow the members in Islington North to open a selection process for a parliamentary candidate, specifically decided at the National Executive that I was not eligible to be considered. And a lot of people locally became very angry about this, and a petition was launched and so on, asking me to stand as an independent if I was not allowed to be considered as a Labour candidate. They then started to impose a shortlist with no consultation locally, drew up a shortlist. I then contacted the party and asked two things: why there wasn't a trigger ballot, which is the system to start a selection process, and I would want to be considered as a Labour candidate. And I got a sort of one-line reply from the General Secretary: we started the process, you're not eligible. So I wrote back and asked what was the appeal system. There is none. You're not eligible to appeal, you're not eligible to be a candidate. By the way, these are your responsibilities as a party member. And so at that point, after a lot of discussion with a lot of people, I said, no, I'm going to run as an independent. That was 3 weeks ago today. We decided I would run as an independent, put my name forward, and from absolutely nothing, we started this campaign, and we've got 1,000 people volunteered to help us. We're out campaigning, leafleting issues: poverty, housing, social justice, international environment, and of course, the war in Gaza.
But it's quite a feat to be able to campaign against the office that you were sitting in. This time last year, you don't have any of the resources, you don't have the marketing, the money, the staff on hand. So how are you going around that? And what are the...
We've had volunteers, many volunteers come in, very talented people who helped with media, with computing, with data collection, legal advice, and above all, people that are prepared to go out in all weathers, deliver leaflets, knock on doors, stand outside stations, and go down streets recruiting our support. and we've got more volunteers than we can almost cope with some days, and they are people that are often local people who were never in the Labour Party, usually voted Labour, but never in it. They said, no, we're doing this because it's not just about me, it's about making a political point. When the two major parties are offering essentially broadly similar economic directions for Britain, which is a straitjacket of austerity, which will underfund our health service, our education service, and not enable the housing that we need to be built, and a foreign policies that are identical, then there needs to be an alternative voice in Parliament. Now, if there's a Labour government, and there probably will be, and it does good things, fine. If they ended the two-child cap on benefits, I would be the first to congratulate them. But if they don't, I'll be the first to say, listen, what have you got? What's the moral argument for impoverishing the third, fourth and fifth child in a large family? Because that is exactly what is happening. We've got more food banks than branches of McDonald's in this country. We've got more billionaires than ever, and I've never known such levels of poverty. The food banks, great queues outside the food banks. That's not right and not necessary. So I'll be that voice in Parliament.
Now, of course, your constituency are people that have known you. I'm sure you've seen some of them grow up from birth until, their life as adults. And
some of them, I was at the wedding of the parents.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But a lot of these people would have been lifelong Labour voters. And you are now trying to convince them to go against that and to vote for you as an independent. Once you get in, if you get in, you're not going to have the same abilities to influence policy, local policy, as you would have inside the Labour Party. So what is that conversation like with them?
Well, the conversation goes something like this. They say, why are you standing as an independent? I go through the lack of democracy, and they say, okay. And the fact that I was not even allowed to be considered as a candidate, they go, yeah, okay, get that. Then they say, well, what influence will you have? I say, I will have the influence you've got. It's all of us doing this together. So when we're demanding housing strategies from the local authority or from government, it'll be our voice collectively. When we're demanding an end to the two-child policy, it's not me, it's millions of people. And so in Parliament, and I've been there a long time, I will be there. I will form alliances with other MPs on particular issues, I always have. On Gaza, there's some degree of all-party consensus of those that are serious about supporting the Palestinian people in their darkest hours. Likewise on Julian Assange. Likewise in the past on miscarriage of justice like Guantanamo Bay, or further back the Irish miscarriage of justice, Guildford, Birmingham and so on. And so I'll be there doing all of that, and I'll be a very active parliamentarian as I've been. Remember, I've actually not been in the Parliamentary Labour Party since October 2020, so we're coming up towards 4 years. I like to think I've been as effective in Parliament as I've ever been at any other time. I'm there, I raise the questions, raise the issues, speak in the debates, ask the questions, and I'll continue doing that. It's about a voice in Parliament, and you know what? If you're a determined MP and you stick at an issue, you can get through.
Who would you work with politically? Are there other people? There's a big push right now to get a lot of independent candidates to challenge safe Labour seats. You have somebody like George Galloway, for example, who said that he would like to see you lead some kind of socialist alliance. Is that somebody that you could work with? Or?
Yeah, look, listen, George and I have known each other a very long time. I first met him when he was a young campaigner for Palestine in the 1970s and 1980s when he was living in Scotland. And we go back a long way. And we've worked very closely together on issues surrounding Palestine and the Middle East, and agree. There's some areas of social policy we would have different views. We understand that, but nevertheless we'll be able to work together. Likewise, I've been very happy to work together with the one Green MP, Caroline Lucas, and of course work together with good friends in the SNP, in Alba, some Liberal Democrats, and the left Labour MPs, Diane Abbott, John McDonnell, Nadia Whittome, Zara Sultana, Richard Bergen, and so on. So I don't think I'm without friends or allies in Parliament. I've got plenty of them.
Do you think, what about this idea of having some sort of alliance, something that challenges the Labour Party once they're in government?
I think we're looking ahead of this election now. This election wasn't expected in this state. In fact, I still can't understand why Sunak called the election for this state. He's probably thinking the same. So after this election, let's see what the land looks like. But I tell you this, if a Labour government's elected, there are hopes by many people that's going to deal with the issues of poverty. It's going to deal with the issues of injustice in our society. It's going to have an economic policy that increases wages and provides workers' rights and so on. But then they've completely boxed themselves in by saying there'll be no change in any taxation. Well, the billionaires have come because of a taxation system that enables it and encourages it. The desperately poor have come from a taxation system that doesn't increase their wages even in line with inflation. Something's got to give, and I think this government, incoming government, any government, is going to be under enormous pressure about living standards. And if they don't deliver on that, well, the political landscape in a year's time, 2 years' time, could be very, very different.
Your name has become somewhat of a political boogeyman. That it's kind of a football that's tossed around between different parties.
You know about Marmite, don't you?
Yeah, of course. I grew up in New Zealand, so
I grew up in New Zealand, so you know about you're Vegemite there or Marmite.
Marmite, yeah, we're Marmite loyalists.
It's Australia only has Vegemite. Okay, get it. Marmite, I love it. Not everybody loves Marmite.
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it.
I'm Marmite, but I tell you this. Marmite is very nutritious. Vitamin B12 comes from Marmite. Right. It doesn't come from everything else. So eat your Marmite.
Right.
It's good for you.
If you read the headlines, if you look at what's happening in Parliament, you have Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, essentially positioning himself as far away from you as possible whenever there's an association, as there was, in that interview just a couple of days ago. He kind of went back on some of the things that he said earlier in his career when he was serving as a shadow minister in your team. He said that he had no hope that government or that campaign that you led was going to get into power. And now he's accusing the Conservatives of pushing Corbyn-style manifestos into the election. The association with what you stood for in that 2019 election seems to represent, or at least, from the way that it's being talked about, bad economic policies, political naivete, or worse. That is a lot for you as a person, as a human being, but also as a politician to have to kind of carry around with you all the time.
Let's just unpick this for a minute. His criticisms of the manifestos of 17 and 19, both of which he was elected on, and then the 2019 one, when he was in the shadow cabinet, he specifically endorsed. Secondly, yes, there were big spending commitments in both those manifestos. Yes, there was the starting of a national investment bank and regional investment banks. Yes, there were big spending commitments. Every single one of them was properly funded, properly assessed, and properly analysed. The manifestos were endorsed by leading economists who said, it's a tough call, but Labour have worked out how to do it. And so the idea that it was unfunded spending commitments is complete nonsense. And anyone that says that knows it. John McDonnell produced also what we call a grey book to go with the manifesto, which explained all of the funding commitments and where the funding was coming from to meet those commitments. We were borrowing to invest, not to run the economy on a day-to-day basis. And so anyone that says differently has either got a strange memory or they didn't read the manifesto on which they were elected. Secondly, the idea that somehow or other a group of people with hindsight now didn't agree with anything that was said in 2019 and thought we're going to lose the election anyway. Well, they never said that to me at the time. We had what's called the Clause 5 meeting, which is a meeting of the Shadow Cabinet, the National Executive, and the Parliamentary Labour Party Committee and others, trade union officials particularly, unanimously endorsed the 2019 manifesto with everybody voting. I was in the room, including Keir Starmer. And so, yes, I led the party. Yes, I helped to write the manifesto. Yes, I put it forward. Of course we didn't win the election. I know that. But let's not just have false memory on this.
Do you think Keir Starmer is dishonest?
I think he is changing his narrative quite frequently, because when he stood for leader of the party, he went out of his way to thank me for converting the Labour Party away from austerity economics into investment economics. Thanks, Keir, that's exactly what I wanted to do. Thanks for acknowledging it. He then announced that we were apparently close friends. Now, I hadn't noticed that bit before, but okay, that's what he says. And then suddenly, I turn into an enemy. What? What is this about? Listen, I put forward, and will always put forward, policies which are about empowerment of people. That was my whole strategy within the Labour Party, was to expand community organising and empower people in their communities, particularly young people. And our membership of the party during my leadership went up from 200,000 to 600,000, largest political party in Europe. That didn't come from nowhere. That came because they felt there was a home, there was a space, there was an opportunity, and there was hope.
What kind of Prime Minister do you think Keir Starmer would make?
Well, he's never held ministerial office before, but then hardly any of the team that are moving into government have been in office before. So that's going to be a tough call for him. Unfortunately, he has instincts of control and demand of people rather than listening to people. And I think that is a trait that you've got to watch very carefully in any political leader. If you're a minister or a party leader, you've got lots of people bigging you up all the time, but not necessarily telling you what you don't want to hear. Often telling you what they want to hear, because you're in a position to influence their lives, give them positions and so on, preferment. I hope he remembers you've got to listen to people, but the whole strategy of his campaign, both as leader of the opposition and now in the election, unfortunately seems to be very detached from ordinary people. I love being on the streets, talking to people. Sometimes you hear things you don't like. Sometimes people are rude. Sometimes people are aggressive. Sometimes people are very friendly, but they're being honest with you. If you get too far away from the people, you can't deliver for the people.
There's a groundswell right now leading up to this election of people that feel betrayed by the Labour position on Gaza, and specifically on Keir Starmer's position, his public comments that he's made in the past. And there are a lot of people that are calling for boycotts of Labour, people that have voted Labour their entire lives, going for independent candidates, people such as yourselves. What do you make of this movement to punish Labour, to boycott Labour at the election? Do you support it?
It's inevitable, and one that we warned against at the very beginning. When the events of October the 7th happened, it was terrible. Innocent people were killed, some of whom were themselves peace activists. And then the Israeli response is essentially a new Nakba on Gaza, driving more than 1 million people out of their homes. That's even larger than the 1948 Nakba. Driving to the south of the Gaza Strip, destroying roads, buildings, schools, houses, hospitals, and also the historical artifacts, the archaeology of Gaza being bombed and destroyed, like a year zero strategy. More people than happened in the Nakba, and now at least 35,000 dead, half of those are children. And then people get up, MPs say, well, Israel is legitimately defending itself. How is defending yourself bombing a hospital? I ask myself that question. And so the revulsion around the world of what's happened is extraordinary. And the move for the recognition of Palestine is uncontroversial in 3/4 of the world's countries, obviously. It's only controversial in Europe and North America. And so I'm really pleased that Ireland, Sweden and Spain have recognised Palestine, and we should do the same. So I think the remarks he and others made when confronted with the issue of war crimes, which is the cutting off of water, electricity, food supplies, bombing civilian targets, bombing civilians, they're all war crimes. I went to the ICJ hearing. South Africa asked me to go, not to give evidence, just to be there as an observer, and I was. fascinating, brilliantly presented, and I thought the history of this is so amazing. I remember supporting the South African opposition during the apartheid years when they were all called terrorists. They've now been the government of South Africa since 1994, and they very bravely took this case to the ICJ, and the ICJ gave its interim ruling and will no doubt give a full ruling later on. So they can't go on saying that this is a right of self-defense. They can't go on saying this is a reasonable response. It's not. This is wanton attacks on civilians in Gaza. And also, let's not forget, 2,000 have died in the West Bank in the recent past. Settler violence. My friend Mick Bowman, a guy from Newcastle, who walked to Palestine in solidarity with them, was on the Hebron Hills trying to protect villagers against settler attacks. That's the sort of thing that's going on. The last thing I'd say on this is, it doesn't often get discussed. What about the Palestinian refugees? Those that have lived in Jordan since 1948, lived in Lebanon, lived in Syria, lived in a diaspora all of their lives. It's their lives as well that are here. So support a ceasefire. There is a possibility, there's an offer there, withdrawal of Israel from Gaza and the West Bank, and then go forward from there. Otherwise, what's the alternative? More arms, more conflict, more death.
When you were Labour Party leader, were you asked to support Israeli military action?
Was I asked to, or did I ask?
No, were you asked to? Was that a requirement?
Oh, I was. One question I was asked at a meeting of the Parliamentary Committee was quite aggressive meeting. It was. They said, Jeremy, this was after I had proposed and the Labour Party had accepted the view of recognition of the state of Palestine. They said, would you agree now to undertake to support Israel in any action it takes? I said, what?
As a blanket statement, any action it takes.
So I said, absolutely not. I wouldn't give that to any country. I wouldn't give that to anybody. I said, no, absolutely not. Yes, I was asked, and I said no.
Who
I
asked
said,
you?
It was a private meeting. I'd rather not say, but I was asked that question. And
was it presented as a suggestion or
a demand?
A demand.
A demand. This was a very hostile meeting. Presented as demand, and I said, absolutely not. I want to see peace in the Middle East. I want to see peace by recognition of the state of Palestine. I want to see peace through the self-determination of the peoples of the region to decide their own future. I'm in touch with, obviously, people in Palestine. I've been there 9 times. And I'm also in touch with people in Israel who are now threatened with all kinds of things just for saying the occupation of Palestine is wrong, just for saying that the Nakba was a disastrous thing for the Palestinian people. So, and they're telling me that the only way to peace is by recognition, the only way to peace is by an end to the bombardment. But we are supplying the weapons, USA supplying the weapons, Germany, France, all supplying the weapons. That's why there's this massive campaign. I've never seen such numbers of people on the streets about Gaza before. This is more than there were during Operation Cast Lead, and that was big. The biggest demonstration then was probably 200,000 people, and now we're getting almost 1 million. And I've been on all of the demonstrations, and I will be.
That's pretty amazing that you've been on every single demonstration that's been over the last 8 months. Yeah. And it's undeniable. It's played a huge role in the political conversations that have taken place in this country and in other countries around the world. And the call from the beginning has been for a ceasefire. Yeah. And here we are 8 months later, and that ceasefire is no closer. We're no closer to it than we were back in October.
Every time it becomes an option, it seems to be vetoed by essentially either the USA or Israel or both. I'm honestly not sure what President Biden's position actually is. I just find some of his remarks odd. He says that he wants to see more aid going into Gaza. I agree. Then he says the aid must not be impeded. I agree. It's being bombed by Israeli forces as it's going in. And who supplies the bombs? Biden's country.
But the UK politically hasn't been that different from the United States.
No, and I have asked questions in Parliament about the use of the Royal Air Force Base at Akrotiri in Cyprus, which is British sovereign base. A huge number of flights taking off there on surveillance over Gaza. What for? What surveillance is there for them to undertake? And where are they sending the information? If they're taking pictures for future cases in international judicial system about bombardment of civilian targets, okay. But I don't think they are. I think that information is being sent back to the Israeli Defense Force.
When you look at the position politically in this country between the Conservatives, who have been pro-Israel unequivocally since the beginning, between this Labour Party that has also been unequivocally pro-Israel, and you're taking part in these protests for 8 months that are attempting to change the political situation, I mean, is there really a way for people to influence this policy here?
Oh, yeah. I was the first Labour leader ever to speak out about Palestine at a Labour Party conference. It's the first time the Labour Party come out clearly in favour of Palestinian recognition as a national policy. And I was proud of that, and we achieved that. It led to an awful lot of opposition to me. Do all these protests make a difference? Yeah, they do actually. When the first vote came up in Parliament about the bombardment and arms supplies on the Scottish National Party motion, there was the most unbelievable level of chicanery going on in Parliament. I was just watching it going on. I knew what was going on. Chats with the Speaker, delay to the start of the debate, wholly irrelevant points of order for hours on, well, almost an hour, all this sort of thing to delay and damage the debate that was about to take place. And then the debate took place, and then the Speaker, bizarrely, instead of following all the precedents, which is the party that initiated the debate has the first chance of a vote on it, i.e. Scottish National Party. And then he manoeuvred it so that the Labour motion was put first, which the Conservatives supported, and that was the end of the debate. I was listening to the pro-Labour front bench MPs in the tea room saying, wow, we did well there, we stopped the vote, we sorted this lot out, we sorted out Corbyn and his mates. It was like kids playing with people's lives in Gaza and in the West Bank. And then it didn't work. It did not work at all. The opposite happened. The public were appalled at this cynical behaviour and the refusal of the Labour Party officially to come out for a ceasefire, and the damage that it's done to the Labour Party was absolutely immense. And I saw that all over the country. I went to, yes, demonstrations in London. I also went to speak in Leeds. I went to speak in Lancashire and so on, in Scotland. I've been all over the country on this, and it's raised the consciousness of a lot of people. And the interesting thing is, the next time the issue comes up in Parliament, all those MPs that have got a really hard time from their communities for not calling for a ceasefire were falling over themselves to use the words, and I want a, where's the cameras, I want a ceasefire. They hadn't voted for one when they had the chance. That's the point.
How much of an impact do you think October 7 in Gaza has had on the political landscape in this country?
Huge. Huge because of what happened, because of the horror of it, but it was also the words of Antonio Guterres come to my mind. He said, this is an appalling event, but it didn't come from nowhere. The occupation has to end, and he goes back to 242, UN 242, goes back to the Geneva Convention, goes back to the International Court of Justice, goes back to the International Criminal Court, goes back to the Security Council, goes back to the General Assembly. There's a whole host of legal decisions that have been taken that have condemned the occupation. Why can't we just say occupation is wrong?
The Labour Party is going into this, they've been under a huge amount of criticism over their policies, over their stances, but they're going into this election under the belief that this is not going to be a major issue for voters. So when it comes down to it, there are things that people care a lot more about than Britain's policy towards Israel.
It's true that foreign policy and international issues don't usually affect election campaigns very much. The issues that come up on the doorstep or in the street are normally about living standards, understandably, about pensions, about education, about jobs, environment, all issues that are seen as being immediate. And that is happening now, except there are quite a lot of people who have said to me on the doorstep, have said, I lost it with Labour when they wouldn't condemn the bombardment of Gaza. I lost it with Labour over that ceasefire vote. And that is a factor. The damage was done after October the 7th and the failure of Labour to condemn the bombing of Gaza.
Do you think Keir Starmer is going to regret the stances in some of the public statements that he made?
As of now, he probably doesn't. I think in the future he probably will, because it's typecast him in one direction, whereas in fact others in Europe, not particularly left-wing places or countries, have said, well, actually, we want peace, therefore we have got to support and demand a ceasefire and stop supplying arms to Israel. We're supplying the bombs, we're supplying the weapons, and Herblit Systems and others that are manufacturing weapons in Britain, they're complicit in it. And I think those companies that think they're immune from this ought to read the ICJ judgment, ought to read what the Genocide Convention actually says. It's not just about the people dropping the bombs, it's also about supplying the weapons that go with it. That's what the Genocide Convention clearly says.
We're speaking a couple of days out from the election now, and there was a poll that came out earlier this week that suggests that Labour is going to win this seat with the 41% majority. How do you feel about your chances? How do you feel the impact that you've had in the very short time that you've had to campaign on?
We've done everything we possibly can to get a message across. We've knocked on thousands of doors, and we're going to continue knocking on doors right up to polling day to get that message across. I'm finding enormous friendship and support from an awful lot of people. Is it going to be easy? No. But it's like lots of old friends returning to the fold, returning to the fray. And you know what? It's the most joyous and united campaign I've ever been part of. And it's just a joy to be with people of such diversity. All faiths, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, atheist, humanitarian, and people from pretty well every country in the world have made their homes in this area, all working together. We're the community at work.
What would you do if you don't win this seat?
Carry on social justice campaigning, carry on human rights campaigning, carry on environmental campaigning, carry on writing, carry on doing all the things I've always done. I'm, as you know, very young and got a lot of energy in me to do all that campaigning, and that will never disappear or go away, even when I'm re-elected as the MP for Islington North.
There we go. I don't want to let you go just yet, so maybe we can take a little bit of a walk, and
yeah, sure,
you can show us Islington. What's your first memory of this place?
Coming in a truck down that road, down here, from Shropshire in the Midlands where I lived. I hitchhiked to London in this truck, and I got off down the Holloway Road, and I stayed.
And you stayed? You've been here ever since?
I stayed ever since, yeah.
What sold you about it? Well, what's your sales pitch for Islington North?
I just came to live in this area in the 69, 71 period, and then I went briefly back to Shropshire for a couple of years, then came back here and worked in unions, and was a councillor in Haringey, neighbouring borough, and then was invited to be considered the candidate for Islington North in 1983, and I've been here ever since.
There's not a lot of MPs in this country that get the kind of reception that you do when you're in public, especially young people too. It's interesting to see, walking with you now, how many people are turning and stopping to look and taking photos. Does that give you confidence going into an election like this, that most people are voting for you based off of your name, the relationship they have with you?
Yeah, well, it gives some confidence, although I want people to vote for us for the politics of it and the offer that we're making rather than just the name recognition, because name recognition is obviously important, but it's not a personality contest. It's about the politics of the time.
Do you think most of your constituency are aware of the fact that you're not standing as a Labour candidate?
Now, yes, because they've had a few weeks to get ready for it. So, yes, they are now. They've had, we've had some weeks of explaining to people what's going on. So we're getting a good reception on that, and they sort of understand what's happening again.
You're meeting people all the time, they're stopping you, you're going to their doors. What is on people's minds going into this election? What's important to them?
Housing, poverty, and hi, right. Yeah, fine, thanks. Particularly housing and housing stress, which is often people who can't afford the private rents, or overcrowding, where they have large families in small flats. And this particularly applies to people from different communities. The Haredi Jewish community have very large families, the Somali community often have very large families, Algerian community and so on. So it's something that crosses all, which is why I was talking about the limit on state benefits only applies to the first 2 children. And I think that's very unfair.
And that's been a contentious issue inside Labour for what sort of
it was
side
brought
of
in
the
by the
policy they land on?
Yeah, it was brought in by the Conservatives after the austerity budget in 2010. Labour opposed it at that time and now say they will not end the policy. And Starmer says they can't afford to. Well, it would cost 1.3 billion a year to take 300,000 children out of poverty. Well, to me, taking children out of poverty is a priority.
When you're talking to people, and are they telling you that, you know, we love you, Jeremy, but you know, I've voted Labour my whole life. Yeah. I'm not going to start going against that now, or do you think people?
For some people, it is a difficult wrench. They say, well, look, you know, I was brought up to vote Labour, as I was. Voted Labour all my life, as I have. And it's very hard not to be voting Labour. And I said, well, if you vote for me, I'm the same person that you've always voted for. And I will be making those demands on that Labour government to bring about the kind of social justice that you believe in too. And many people say, well, that's fine.
What does it feel like for you not carrying the Labour red as you're campaigning, not being a part of this institution that has shaped you?
A bit strange that I was brought up campaigning for the Labour Party from the age of 16 onwards. Yeah. That was what our family did. It's what my mum and dad did. So yes, it is strange, and many people feel very conflicted and very sad about it, understandably. But the politics and the demands of the time are actually very important, and the principle of accountability and democracy are also very important. I haven't changed. I'm the same person with the same politics. I do think that in the longer period, if the Labour Party continues its headlong rush to the political right on both economic and international policies, then it creates the space. Because if Labour can't deliver for people in terms of improved living standards and social justice, then unions and others are going to look for alternatives. It's not happening yet, though.
Would you lead something like that?
I'm not looking to lead any organisation. What I'm looking to do is be elected for here. What I'm interested in is the growth of community and democratic demand politics. Community and what I call demand politics. And so what I've said is, if elected for here, I will establish a monthly citizens' assembly in which I will report back on what I've been doing, invite other campaigns to come along, housing, environment, health, jobs, local businesses, all that, as a way of building up a community strength and hold our local authority and government to account that way. Whatever develops from that, same kind of thing happening around the country could be a very interesting development.
Yeah.
I got these ideas in part from Workers' Party of Brazil, what they've been doing. So it's this, we learn from each other all the time.
The last time we spoke, we were talking about the future of the left in Britain and this space that used to exist traditionally inside the Labour Party that feels like it's very visibly missing.
Being closed off, and the levels of expulsion and suspension and control of local party activities is very, very unhealthy. A democratic party has got to cope with a diversity of opinion. And so if you want to succeed as a party, you have to accept there are differences within it and also allow those differences to be expressed and allow that policy development to take place. I've been my life in the Labour Party. I've never known a time when people are so frightened to say anything. It's not healthy.
These are your colleagues in the Labour Party?
Yeah, I talk to them all the time. And I talk to people who are party members, I talk to people who are former party members, I talk to Labour MPs, not all of the left, and many of them are concerned about the direction in which the party's going. Yes, they want to win the election, I understand that, but I say, well, look at the manifesto you're fighting on, there's not much in it.
Do you still have support in the Labour Party?
Yes, a lot of friends in the Labour Party. And a poll I saw of party members, more than half said I was doing the right thing to stand as an independent, which is that's telling. When that number of people in the party think that I've been forced into doing this but by no alternative, that's quite a big statement.
Well, the CLP chair for Islington North was out flying for you the other day, right?
She was. I think she's now been suspended or something from membership.
She's resigned.
She resigned, yeah. I saw her last night and she seemed emotionally affected by it. I've known her for a long time, many years. And she came to the housing hustings we were doing last night, which the Labour candidate refused to attend. Housing is the one issue that faces everybody in this area. He refused to attend. His loss.
What voice are you going to carry into Parliament as an independent if you win?
Yes, of course you can.
Cheers. Oh, I'm a fellow Arsenal fan as well.
Oh my God, Arsenal. Now, are we? Just tell me this before we take a picture. Are we going to win the league next season?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, that's all right. I'll take the picture. And the one after. I'm not worried about the one after. I'm worried about the next one.
Take care. Good luck.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
If you win in 2 weeks' time, what kind of voice are you going to carry into what essentially you're going to be an opposition figure if Labour gets in?
It will be an historic win here. It will be history. To win as an independent against the party machine in a general election will be historic. There'll be a big voice coming from that. So don't worry, I won't be quiet.
Are you going to be a thorn in the neck of Keir Starmer if he becomes Prime Minister?
I've been a thorn in the neck of all leaders except when I was leader, and I'll continue doing that. Listen, politics is about people putting those thorns here and there and everywhere, achieving things. That's what I do.
Well, it's been a pleasure walking with you today.
Fantastic.
And thank you for giving us the time.
What a lovely day it's been. And just with the bridge we're standing on, you know I love history. This is the railway line. It goes all the way to Barking in the east of London. The Tory government tried to close the line and turn it into a road. A lot of us, including me, opposed it. And then at that time there were only 4,000 passengers a day using the whole line. Now it's open, it's busy, it's electrified, and it's a very, very effective, good local transport facility. That only happened because all of us here campaigned to save it.
So you walk around this place and you see
campaigns we've had.
Campaigns and policies and fights. Some of you lost, some of you won.
But there's always a fight.
Yeah, and you want to keep fighting.
Keep fighting, I'll never stop.
Jeremy Corbyn, thank you
My
so much.
pleasure. Thank you so much, and you're welcome in Islington North anytime, particularly on Midsummer's Day.
Long may it continue.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Big Picture, and thank you to our guest today, Jeremy Corbyn. We want to know what you think, what you have to say about this conversation and about the upcoming general election. Are you somebody that has voted for Labour your whole life and are now questioning whether that party still has your support? Let us know in the comments below, and let us know who you'd like us to speak to next. As always, you can listen to our episodes, including this one, wherever you get your podcasts from. And until next time, ta-ra.